So what could have been a nice solution to the shadows problem that a lot of those engines had, unfortunately, just was kind of ignored. Like, even Fear didn't really do that, but you might have noticed whenever games like Doom 3 or Fear did have, so-called fill lights in a level, you notice those were the areas that usually look the best, and that would be why. And one of the things I used to like back in the day with Doom 3 was downloading the custom maps that were set during the day. I was always fascinated by that, where, you know, they're kind of, stereotypically meant for kind of like dark horror games, but they don't have to be. And I mean, in fact, Enemy Territory, Quake Wars used Tech 4. But I think the fill lights thing is a better solution than, uh, global illumination, at least real time stuff. I really don't think real time GI was ever something that mattered. Even back in 2004, 2005 type era, I remember hearing all the time about shit like pre-computed radiance transfer. There's even games for the original Xbox. I found a paper on it one time. I haven't been able to find it since, but it was for like Moto GP or some bullshit like that on the original Xbox, where they used hemispherical harmonics to essentially imitate GI on the, like your character or whatever when you're driving around. So it would basically sample the color of the textures directly beneath you and kind of, add an additional light on the underside of you with the kind of average color of that. And it used hemispherical harmonics for that. And I believe Unreal Engine 3 was capable of that. But I think most of the time, level designer placed fill lights are good enough, because most games do not have environments that are like that dynamic, right? Like even shit like it's like Red Faction really didn't utilize as much of the geomod as most people probably would have wished it did. Most games are fairly static, and even the stuff I do. However, with the fill lights, you can script it in most engines that I'm aware of to basically turn the lights off. It's like, for example, you have some destruction stuff, and okay, that fill light you had placed there that also kind of functioned as fake GI, turn, like disable that light, kill the entity, whatever, replace it with another one of a color that's like for the new lighting or whatever. So you can still sort of fake it to some degree. It's kind of pseudo dynamically like that. And in an engine with like Doom 3 or whatever, that's the easiest it could be, because I've simulated global illumination in like Half-Life 2, Source Engine before. But because it's static light maps, if you want to have lights animated like that, so to speak, it massively increases the light map size, because if you have, for every single light that can turn on and off, it has to render a new light map for that, at least for the area it covers. But with those dynamic lighting engines, you just turn the light off, right? So I'm not really sure why more stuff didn't use that, but like, so I remember that back in the day, reading the Half Lambert paper for episode 1 from Valve, for example, where they show the mathematical stuff, and they show the different versions of Alex. Here's the diffuse, here's the specular, here's the Half Lambert term, this and that, and it says what operation it was, addition, multiplication, whatever. You can literally take those images off the paper into GIMP or whatever photo program and just merge them together, using multiply or add or whatever it says they used mathematically in the rendering, and it'll look like the final result does on the paper itself. It's literally just mathematical operations on texel values. So it's really not a difficult thing to do. And what would be cool about the half Lambert, or not half Lambert, the constant ambient thing, it would be you're just basically copying the ambient, the diffuse pass twice. Once as part of the so-called full render, and then that final pass over where you're just multiplying it with the otherwise final result. So yeah, it's a little bit slower, but you're reusing information you already rendered anyway. And something I miss about old engines, and this is part of why I don't like BFG, I mean, frankly, if you think BFG is good and you want to complain that Doom 3 was dark and you want to fucking duct tape on all that bullshit, you're an idiot, right? No wonder they fucked up, Doom 3 with that shit in 2016. All that. Look at the type of motherfuckers playing Doom 3. But one of the things I didn't like about Doom, the BFG edition is that it's like a deferred renderer now, or at least as far as I remember. Because I mean, I didn't pay for it. I know that. I'm pretty sure I got it because I already owned Doom 3 on Steam. Because as I mentioned on like the disc versions and all this, Painkiller, Doom 3, Fear. There's games like that where not only did I own the disc version, oh yeah, Quake 4 too. Not only did I own the disc version, like with Fear, for an example, I bought the original game, I bought the expansions separately. Then I bought the like original kind of like Ultimate Edition or whatever they called it, retail, or maybe they called it Gold or something. That was all three of them together. And then I bought them on fucking Steam, right? So some of these games I'll buy 3-4 times or have. I mean, I'll never spend a penny on video games ever again. Well, it's unlikely, and if I did, it ain't going to be through fucking Steam. That's for sure. I've considered actually paying for Boiling Point on Good Old Games since I found out that they put it on there a while back under certain conditions, but only because it was on GOG and only because, you know, if the money will go to the original devs and not the publisher, because fuck Atari, I would even buy it not on sale. But that's one of those ones, I'll get into that in a little bit. But a lot of these games, either, I already had the disc and I either activated it on Steam or, in some cases I couldn't find my CD case or whatever, and so I would just buy it again. But these are games I bought back when you could buy a game worth a fuck, right? But Quake 4 was another one that I might consider replaying again pretty soon. That's another one I have on disc and Steam. And everything I have on Steam I've had for 10 plus years. I'll never spend another penny on Steam for sure. But the graphical technology of the time, I kind of hate the idea that we went from the unified lighting and shadowing shit, and it was for like a year or two in the mid 2000s, and then everything went back to baked lighting, right? Like Fear 2, I mean, I thought it looked great, right? And, there's a lot of things with Fear 2, publisher BS, Monolith not even knowing if it was really their IP anymore. And it's like there's a reason Fear 2 is the way it is, because it essentially started as a spiritual successor. But I still don't understand why they felt the need to take out the shadows, because the functionality is still there, because they use them in a few different areas of the game. But there's no reason also they couldn't have both. And that's one of the things that I liked about CSGO's engine, back around 2012-ish or whatever the fuck, was that, you had the sun shadows that were like truly dynamic. But then it was like also baked light maps. And so if you got too far away, it kind of blended out, right? And overall, I think the effect worked pretty well. But as I mentioned, I liked seeing like Doom 3 era maps that were like set during the day. And Fear had a little bit of that. And then, as I mentioned, Quake Wars used Tech 4. And I would do shit like that. It was a little bit of an issue with Doom 3's engine, because there's no orthographic shadow projection. At least by default, every light in Doom 3 is a point light. So it's an omnidirectional shadows. And so like trying to simulate sun shadows could be a little bit difficult. Basically what it would mean is that you had to make a really wide radius light source and make the skybox as big as possible so it would look as orthographic as possible. But I mean, technically, even the real sun shadow isn't fully orthographic, but we subtend such a small angle of the sun that it may as well be. Maybe there's new versions of Radiant or whatever with these different source ports that maybe that's an actual thing in there now. But it's actually not that difficult to make a during the day map with Doom 3 with convincing looking sun shadows. I mean, pretty much all you have to do is like what I mentioned as far as placing the main shadow caster that's ostensibly for the sun shadow. And then you can also place a really big, fill light and, just have it disable it rendering normal maps, rendering, specularity and also rendering shadows, and just have it as a true pure, light source. And that can really, just brighten up everything. But then also you can place lights, or, like at the outside of a brick building, let's say you could have little fill lights that are faintly red colored, so like it looks like the color of the brick is reflecting off the ground or something, which is kind of no different than global illumination light probe shit, right? It's just, I mean, it's dynamic in this case, but it's not important sampling or whatever the fuck, so it's way faster. But doing a constant ambient the way I was thinking of it to get a proper sort of fill light, the nice thing about that is because you're just reusing the diffuse, it's nowhere near as performance intensive as using the fill lights method. And I don't know, I kind of wish that global illumination could have been something in video games, but nowadays, I don't know. They want to add too much shit that I don't know. I realize now that it's not really that important to the graphical style. The aesthetic matters more. Most of this technology doesn't help. But what I liked about old school engines like, Fear and Doom 3 was that they were forward renderers. So adding another pass, yeah, it would be slower, but you just do it. And it worked auto magically with anti-aliasing and all that. And the problem is that deferred rendering supposedly was to be able to use more lights in this and that. Okay, well, hypothetically there might be a use case with what I was mentioning. But if they would just put a constant ambient term that like is what I'm thinking of, that wouldn't matter either. But if you think you need 1,000 lights in a scene, what you need is a better level designer. But at the same time, I don't know why they were super worried about forward rendering in the past. Oh, well, if you want more than one material, you have to do a second pass. It's like, okay, we'll do another pass then, right? What's hilarious is if you look at some of these tech nerd channels and they'll sit there and step through every part of a single rendered frame of a video game, which in case they make you think they're a guru or whatever, you can just download the tools they use, right? They're not doing anything special, really. I don't remember the name of it. I haven't downloaded it yet. But Intel has something. I never got around to it, but I bookmarked it. But you'll notice these deferred rendering programs, games, like they'll do like 100 fucking passes in a frame, and it's like, well, then, so what are you worried about with forward rendering, right? Especially because unless they're using so-called deferred decals, they're doing a forward pass for translucency, right? Unless it's stipple pattern, and that's a separate issue from Unreal Engine 5, although it plays into it. I mean, that's its whole own video, but probably I'm not going to do that right now. But I kind of always wished, another thing that we could have got was like order independent translucency, which I remember AMD tech demos of it from like 2011. It's just using linked lists. This is actually why binding glass to an entity in Source Engine will fuck up translucency sorting, because normally it would use a linked list to sort it just based off of the like brush ID or whatever, but that's only if it's world geometry. Yeah, more you know, or I think that's how it works. But yeah, there's so few things that really get in the way of graphics, but super sampling and ordered independent translucency, and then something to just kind of brighten up the shadows on unified engines, particularly with shadow volumes. I would never personally need anything else